All right, so just as a reminder, you're going to have 19 questions on your final exam. 19 questions. 19 questions, and what? I would get at least 9 to 10. Correct. Okay. And so really quick, in this first section, you're going to have 6 questions. I'm just going to kind of go through what all are these numbers. So AKS 8 is going to be that geometric series. And I would probably write this down. This is going to be this formula. And you are given it on your formula sheet. But they could ask this in a number of ways. They could put this as a word problem, or they could just be like, here's numbers. Find the first like 15 terms sum. Okay. They could ask something like that. Remember, your A is your initial. Your R is your rate. So that's going to be your second term divided by your first term. The first thing that you need to make sure that you check is the D, like if it actually is multiplied each time. Okay. So it's multiplied by what each time? 3, 6, 12. What number is multiplied each time? Not 3. 6. We're multiplying by a number. 2. Okay, so the rate would be 2. And is that going to be true for the next thing? Yes. That n would be the number of terms that they want us to look for. Let's say that it was 15. Let's say they wanted us to do 15 terms. You would plug 15 in for n. Okay, that's AKS 8. All right, AKS 20 is going to be solving radical equation. This would look something like this, where you would have the square root of x minus 2 equals 4. Remember, for this, you want to make sure that you isolate a radical and then square both sides and then solve. Again, I would highly suggest All right, so the next one is going to be AKS 17. AKS 17 is talking about creating equations. So this is going to be in that linear programming section. And then solving them. Okay. Remember, the best way to do these is to create your equation, graph them, and either if it's an inequality, it's going to be where the darkest shaded region is, or if it's just equations, it's wherever they cross over. Okay. So something like f of x is x plus 2, and g of x is negative 2x plus 4. What is the solution to f of x equals g of x? So something like that. You would graph both of those equations and then see where they cross over. I'm going to make this a little bigger. I'm sorry. AKS 18 is going to probably be a little bit more focused on creating those inequalities. Okay, and then solving. So with AKS 18, this is going to be something like you have to sell at least 5 donuts and at least 2 cupcakes. Each cupcake is worth $4, and each donut is worth $2. Right, the inequality. So again, that's coming from that linear programming. Yeah. Okay, AKS 3 is kind of just like embedded across the board. AKS 3 is going to be your word problems. Okay, so the fact that that's in this section means that each one of these different types of questions could be a word problem. Okay, so AKS 3 is a fancy way of saying, hey, it's going to be a word problem or it's going to be in context. Okay, so just a heads up. That means that 1, 2, 3, 4 AKS are going to come from 6 questions. Okay, so in this next section, we've got all the key features. Okay, so I'm going to write those down here. We got 32, 33, 35, and 38 down here at the bottom. We're going to write 32, 33, 35, and 38. And we're going to go through what each one of these actually means. All right, so AKS 35 is going to be graphing square roots, cube roots, and piecewise functions. Okay, again, if I was the county, I would probably put this as a word problem where those piecewise functions are going to give you a little bit of problems if you're not paying attention. So just as a reminder, if it's graphing square roots or cube roots, what they're going to ask you to do is they're going to give you an equation and then they're going to say, which of the following is the graph? Okay, for piecewise functions, they may say something like, you're going to send a postage stamp for $2. It can weigh up to 1 ounce. For $4, it can weigh up to 2 ounces. I can type, I swear. And for $6, it can weigh up to 3 ounces. And then the question would be, write the piecewise function. Now remember, this is multiple choice. So you're going to select the one that actually represents this. With inequalities, remember that if you have something like this, this means X is greater than. If you have something like this means X is less than. If you have the line underneath, that means also equal to. Thank you. Okay, AKS 38 is going to be graphing exponential and logs. So this one might be something like identify the graph. Or it could be something like find the transformation. Remember, that's going to be all of those A, H, K things that we've been talking about. Remember, A is either a stretch or a shrink. H moves left and right. And then K moves up and down. AKS 51 and 52, those are going to deal with inverse and exponential and log. So on 52, this is going to be being able to rewrite logs as exponentials and vice versa. So that's going to be the whole circle of life deal. Okay. Remember, with the circle of life, you start at your base, move to the outside, and then finish out your exponent or just the inside, depending on if you're going from log to exponential. And again, we're going to go over questions like that in just a second. AKS 51 is understanding the relationship between exponential and log and understanding that those are inverses of each other. Okay, if you ever see the word inverse, you want to think switch your X and Y. Again, we'll go through a couple problems like that in just a second. Going back up to 33, this is talking about the average rate of change. If I was a betting person, I would bet that they're going to probably ask something like, compare the average rate of change from an exponential to probably a quadratic, maybe. Remember, average rate of change is just a fancy way of saying slope. If you don't remember the formula for slope, remember that's y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. Yep. All right. 32 is going to be finding key features. This is going to be like domain, range, x-intercept, y-intercept, and behavior. Again, my best guess would be that they absolutely are going to ask you an in behavior question. And then they're also going to put this as a word problem. They're going to try to freak you out on that. It's just going to be a lot of reading. Okay, just go ahead and prep for it. AKS 42 is going to be something like identifying parts of an equation in context. It's going to deal something with that. Okay. So it might ask something like, what is the initial amount? This could also look like the compound interest problems. Notice how on your formula sheet, there it is. On your formula sheet, they don't give you the compound interest formulas. You kind of have to know those, okay? All right, the last section that we're going to go over is AKS 24 and then AKS 28. So 24 is going to be talking about the normal distribution. Okay, this is going to have z-score. This is going to have pull from the z table, which are going to be your proportions or probability. This is all that stuff from unit 7. And then AKS 28 is going to be talking about inferences. So it's kind of like making a conclusion at the end of something. We saw this when we were talking about candidates and whether they were going to win. Kind of like what Giovanni said earlier, you need to do at least 9 to 10 good things, okay? Majority of your stuff is coming from this middle section. That's talking about key features and graphing. Okay, that's where we struggle a little bit. So that means that you're going to have to put in a little bit more effort in this section. Okay, and that's where majority of this stuff is. Now you can do this other 6 to 3 questions right here, but majority of your stuff is going to fall in the 10 section realm. Okay, so looking at your review guide. Okay, this first section is solving each equation, and this is talking about radicals. What's another way to say raise something to the 1/2 power? Another way to say raising something to a 1/2 power. That's the same thing as taking the square root. Does that make sense? The square root is the same thing as raising something to the 1/2 power. Now, we're trying to solve. So we've isolated the radical by itself. We're going to square both sides. And that's going to give us -1 minus 2x equals x squared. Now we see that this is a quadratic because that's squared, which means that we're going to move everything to one side and then either factor, or I'm going to show you a cheat code way to do it. So again, we're going to move everything to one side. We're going to add 1, move it to the other side, add 2x, move it to the other side. And so this is going to give me x squared plus 2x plus 1, and that's equaling 0. Now we can factor this, or if I want to do it the easy way, I can go into Desmos, because Desmos carries. If I can type it in, that'd be great. Okay, if I go into Desmos, I can type in this equation. And where does it touch the x-axis? At -1. My solution would be x equals -1. Now, remember, extraneous solutions are solutions that we would get here, but when we plug them back in, they don't work. Let's check that really quick. If we plug -1 back into this equation, we would get -1 minus 2 times -1, and we're going to take the square root of that. So this would give me -1 minus, plus 2, which is going to give me +1. If we take the square root of 1, we would get +1. Is +1 equal to -1? No. So this would have no solution. Because this is a multiple choice question, and I want you to take the easy route on this, I'm going to show you another way you can do this. Okay, you can take the equation and you can go into Desmos and you can type the equation that's on the left-hand side in. And then type the equation on the right-hand side. Do they ever touch? No. That means that there's going to be no solution. All you're going to do is plug it into Desmos. Biggest thing is we cannot tell you how to type in like square roots or logs or anything like that. So you got to know how to do that. That's why you have like a week to study for this. Okay. When I come in here and I type in x minus 1, I'm going to make sure that that's underneath the radical. I'm going to plot this point and then draw it off to the right-hand side. Okay, and yes, for right now, you can just draw like a rough sketch. That's okay. Are there any questions about 9 through 16? Okay. I think we already talked about 23 through 26. So I'm going to go ahead and skip down here. Let's go ahead and take a look at 27. So it says identify the domain and range of each. Okay. So we're going to take this and we're going to go ahead and type it into Desmos. And then we're going to identify the domain and range. Okay. So first we're going to type it into Desmos. What's up? Yep. Right. So once we type it in, what we're going to do is we're going to look at the domain. So the domain, it doesn't go past this vertical asymptote right here, which is x equals 1, right? So our domain is going to be 1 to positive infinity. So from left to right, we go 1 to positive infinity. For range, all logs are going to have negative infinity to positive infinity. Let's say that they wanted us to find the average rate of change for this between 3 to 5. To find the average rate of change, you would do y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So looking at our table, here is our x1, y1. Here is our x2, y2. We're going to plug all of that in. So we're going to get 5 minus 4 divided by 5 minus 3. That's going to give me 1/2. So whatever interval they give you, that will be your x1, x2, and then you would pull the y values from the table. All right, I'm skipping around. 47 through 50. So finding the inverse of each function. Okay, so to find the inverse, the first thing we do is switch our x and y. And then we solve for our y. We're going to get our log by itself. We're going to subtract 6 from both sides. And then we're going to use the circle of life. We're going to start at our base, which is going to be 10. Go to the outside and finish on the inside. So that's going to be 10 raised to the x minus 6 equals y plus 8. We still want y by itself, so we're going to subtract 8 from both sides. So this will be 10 raised to the x minus 6 minus 8 equals y. Another way you could have checked this without having to do any math is if you graph this guy and you graph this guy, and they are reflecting across the line y equals x, then that's the inverse. So if you turn your head to the side and look at it, it should look like a reflection across that line. Can you try number 48? Okay, so on 48, first thing we're going to do is switch our x and y. And we want to get that log by itself. So we're going to subtract 10. And now we're going to do the circle of life to get that y by itself. So we're going to start our base, which is 6. Outside is x minus 10. And then finish on the inside. So we're going to have 6 raised to the x minus 10 equals 4y. Y is still not by itself. So we're going to divide by 4 on both sides. That's going to give me 6 raised to the x minus 10 divided by 4 equals y. Ta-da! Another way to kind of do this without having to actually do math is we know that this is our base. So in our inverse, this should also be our base. We're going to have x as an exponent, and we're going to change the sign of this guy. Okay, that happened to be what happened over here too. We had 10 raised to the x minus 6 minus 8. So notice how there's a pattern that's going on. Okay, looking at the next section, you could be asked some of these questions because they do deal with exponential. Okay, so on this first one, a new social media site is increasing the user base by approximately 6% per month. If the site currently has 21,490 users, what will be the approximate user base be in 10 months from now? Okay, so we're going to use that whole formula where we have a times 1 plus r raised to the n. So we have 21,490 times 1 plus our rate, which is 0.06. And we're going to raise that to the 10th power because that's how many months we've got. We would take this and plug it into Desmos. And that's going to give us 38,485. And we'll just leave it like that because we don't want to have half a user. Okay, so I just want to point out one thing because we've kind of gone through everything that could be potentially on your test. Again, I haven't seen your test exactly, but I can kind of guess what would be on there. If you go to my eClass page, I'm going to show you a couple of tools that are at your disposal. One, you go down to the announcement section and you hit show more announcements. Right here is a document that has all the YouTube links for every date that we have had class. Okay, this one will also be included on here. Okay, so after I finish this, I'll upload that. Okay, another thing that's at your disposal is if you go into content, on the left-hand side, there's a category that's called Spring Final Exam Review. If you click right here, there's a copy of your Spring Final Exam Review. There are also videos, which I don't know why these are blotted out, but they're there. Nope, they're there. They should be there. Okay, there will be videos. There should already be videos in here of all the final exam review. There are also review videos from each unit. So for instance, AKS 18, 17, and 38 are all in your final exam. So they're all embedded in here. AKS 23 and 24 are right here. Okay, so there is no reason why you should fail this final exam except if you have not prepared for the final exam. Okay, so those resources are there for you, as well as this video will be uploaded on there as well.